Okay, so the pyramids of Egypt. I mean, just saying the words, it brings up these incredible images, doesn't it? These silent giants out there in the sand.
Absolutely. Defying time.
And the big questions, they still kind of hang in the air, don't they? How exactly did they build them, and what were they really for?
Yeah, the core mysteries.
So this time, that's what we're plunging into, this enduring enigma. We've pulled together a whole load of information from the basics right through to really specific stuff on like construction methods and the symbolism.
Right.
And the mission really is to try and pull out the most compelling insights into these incredible structures.
And it's fascinating right from the start, even just the language. The ancient Egyptian word for pyramid was mur.
Myrrh. Okay.
Yeah, and the hieroglyph, ooh, it even looks a bit like one. And get this, there's a pretty strong suggestion it connects to the Ben.
The Ben, the primordial mound from the creation myths.
Exactly that. So think about it. The very shape of these things might echo their idea of how the world began.
Oh.
And the capstone, the very top piece, they called that the Ben, like a smaller version. It really shows how deep that shape ran in their thinking.
Okay, so hold on. This shape, this iconic pyramid shape, it isn't just like architecture. It's echoing the moment of creation for them.
That seems to be the idea.
And that shape becomes the tomb, maybe the launch pad to the afterlife for the pharaohs. That's a powerful connection.
It really is.
But these things, these massive engineering projects, they didn't just appear fully formed, right? There was a buildup.
Oh, absolutely not. There's a clear development. You can see precursors, these old burial mounds, tumuli out in the Sahara, even before dynastic Egypt.
Right.
Then in the early dynastic period, you get the mastabas, those sort of rectangular, flat-topped.
Niche-like ones.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is inside some of the early ones, like Mastaba 3808 at Saqqara, they actually found these little step pyramid structures built inside.
Like prototypes.
Kind of. Suggests they were already playing with that upward-reaching shape, maybe testing it out.
So fiddling with the design, almost in miniature. And then comes Djoser.
Ah, yes. Djoser's step pyramid at Saqqara. That's the game changer.
Generally seen as the first proper Egyptian pyramid, right?
Yeah.
And maybe the world's oldest big structure made of cut stone.
That's the consensus, yeah. Around 2630 BCE or so. And when you think about it, stacking precisely cut stones on that scale, back then, it's pretty mind-blowing.
It really is.
And it's key to remember it started as a mastaba.
Oh, right.
Then they just kept adding layers, expanding upwards and outwards, until they got that final 6-step shape.
So it evolved during construction.
It seems so. And the belief is that the step design wasn't just for show, it was meant to be a literal stairway.
A stairway for the pharaoh's soul.
For the pharaoh's soul to climb up to the heavens, to the gods.
A physical ramp to the afterlife. Okay, I can picture that. But Djoser's amazing pyramid, it's still steps. The classic smooth-sided ones we all think of, they came later, in the 4th dynasty.
Exactly. The 4th dynasty, that's the golden age. That's when they really cracked the code, moving from steps to the true pyramid shape. You see the attempts, the learning process, at places like Meidum and Dashur.
Right. The bent pyramid and the red pyramid.
Yes, leading up to the absolute peak at Giza.
And Giza. I mean, wow. It's not just pyramids, is it? It's this whole complex.
It's an entire sacred landscape. You've got the 3 big ones, Khufu, Khafre, Menkaure. Then the smaller Queen's pyramids, causeways, temples, and of course...
the Sphinx, watching over it all.
A great Sphinx, yeah. But the scale of the main pyramids is just staggering. Khufu's, the Great Pyramid, is the biggest ever built in Egypt.
And the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing.
The only one, and by far the oldest of them. Then you have Khafre's. It's actually a little smaller than Khufu's.
But it looks taller, doesn't it?
It does, because it's built on slightly higher ground and the sides are a bit steeper. Plus, crucially, it still has some of that original polished white limestone casing right near the top. Oh, wow. So you can actually see what they must have looked like.
A little glimpse, yeah. Imagine all of them, gleaming white in the sun. Brilliant.
It must have been unbelievable, almost blinding. And the sheer amount of rock involved. What was it for the Great Pyramid?
The estimate is something like 2.3 million blocks of limestone.
2.3 million.
And they weigh, on average, over 2 tons each. Some are much, much heavier, especially the granite used inside.
2 tons. Quarrying that, moving it, lifting it into place with basically copper tools and ropes. It just boggles the mind. It speaks to incredible organization.
Absolutely. Planning, manpower, logistics on a scale that's hard to comprehend even now. But this peak period, the Fourth Dynasty frenzy, it didn't last forever.
No, it didn't. After the Fourth Dynasty, you see a definite, well, decline is maybe a strong word, but a change. The pyramids get smaller, the construction quality isn't quite the same.
Yeah, less focus on sheer size, maybe.
Then later, in the Middle Kingdom, they start building pyramids again, but often with mud brick cores and just a stone casing, which haven't survived nearly as well, obviously.
Right. But the idea didn't completely die out in Egypt. It actually spread, didn't it? To Kush.
It did, yeah. Much later, the Kushite rulers, down in what's now Sudan, conquered Egypt for a time. And they adopted the tradition, building their own steeper pyramids. Quite a lot of them, actually, something like 80 known ones.
Fascinating. So the influence lasted centuries. And it's almost funny, but also terrifying to think someone later tried to tear the Giza ones down.
Yeah, in the 12th century AD, a sultan, Al-Aziz Uthman, he actually gave it a go.
How far did he get?
Not very far. He managed to damage Menkaur's pyramid. You can still see the scar today. But the sheer effort involved was just too much. They gave up.
Tells you something about how well they were built.
It really does. They're monuments in the truest sense of the word, enduring.
So, okay, the main idea, the widely accepted one, is that they were tombs, grand tombs for pharaohs and their queen.
That's the standard archaeological view, yes.
Yeah.
The internal structures, the sarcophagi found in some, the associated funerary temples, it all points that way.
But it wasn't just about burial, was it? That shape, the myrrh, the Ben-Ben connection, there's deep symbolism there.
Oh, absolutely. The shape itself, as we said, likely represented that primordial mound of creation, but also maybe the sloping rays of the sun descending to Earth.
The sun god Ra being so central.
Exactly. And that polished white limestone casing we talked about, it would have made them shine brilliantly. Their names even reflected this. The bent pyramid was called the Southern Shining Pyramid. Senusret Seconds was Senusret Shines.
Like beacons of light. Solar power made manifest.
Something like that. And there's also this idea, maybe more speculative but compelling, that they were seen as resurrection machines.
Resurrection machines? How so?
Well, tied into the complex Egyptian beliefs about the afterlife journey, the pyramid itself might have been thought to somehow facilitate the pharaoh's transformation and ascent.
Okay.
Think about those narrow shafts inside the Great Pyramid. They're precisely aligned.
Towards stars, right, or specific parts of the sky?
Yes, towards certain constellations, and particularly towards a dark patch in the northern sky that the Egyptians associated with the gateway to the afterlife, the Duat.
So they weren't just random vents. They were aiming tubes.
It strongly suggests a deliberate celestial alignment aimed at helping the pharaoh's spirit reach its destination.
Like an engineered pathway to the stars. And it's significant they're always on the west bank of the Nile, isn't it?
Always, without exception. The west bank, where the sun sets, was the land of the dead in their cosmology. The east bank was the land of the living.
So every detail, even the location, reinforces the purpose.
It all ties together.
Right. So we have the why tombs, symbolism, resurrection. Let's get back to the how, the construction. The mainstream archaeological view is, well, it's teams of skilled workers, right? Not slaves like in the movies.
That's the overwhelming evidence now, yes. For a long time, the idea of slaves building the pyramids was popular, but the archaeology tells a different story. We found extensive remains of worker villages near Giza, for example.
Villages, like proper towns.
Yeah, with housing, bakeries, breweries, cemeteries, even evidence of medical care bones that were set properly. These people were well fed and looked after. They seem to have been conscripted laborers, perhaps, working on rotation, but skilled artisans and workers, not slaves.
Okay, that makes sense. And the tools they used?
Pretty much what you'd expect for the Bronze Age. Copper chisels and saws. Copper is soft, so they likely had to keep resharpening or replacing them constantly. Harder stone pounders like dolerite, and wooden levers, rollers, ropes.
And getting those huge blocks from the quarry to the site, that's always seemed like one of the biggest challenges.
A huge challenge. Most of the main limestone blocks came from quarries relatively close by, like right there at Giza. But the special stones...
Like the white casing limestone?
Exactly. That came from Tura, across the Nile. And the massive granite blocks for the inner chambers came all the way from Aswan, hundreds of miles south.
By boat?
By barge, yeah. Along the Nile. And we actually have direct proof of this now. The discovery in 2013 of the Diary of Mirror was incredible.
The Diary of Mirror, what's that?
It's a logbook, basically. Papyrus logs kept by an official named Mirror during the reign of Khufu, detailing the transport of white limestone blocks from the Tura quarries to Giza for the Great Pyramid.
No way. Real-time records.
Yeah, talking about the boat crews, the journeys, delivering the stone for the horizon of Khufu, which was the pyramid's name. It's amazing.
That just blows away so many myths. Okay, so they get the stone to the site. How do they move these multi-ton blocks across the ground?
The best evidence points towards wooden sleds, large sledges.
Pulled by teams of workers.
Yes. And there's fascinating experimental archaeology and even some ancient depictions suggesting they wet the sand in front of the sled.
With the sand. Why?
It makes the sand firmer, reduces the friction dramatically. Apparently, just the right amount of water can cut the pulling force needed by as much as half.
Simple, but ingenious.
Very. A clever bit of applied physics.
Okay, so sleds, wet sand, they get the blocks to the base. Then they need cutting and shaping.
Right. They'd do the final dressing of the stones near the construction site for a precise fit, and getting the foundation perfectly level was crucial.
How do they manage that on such a huge area?
Various techniques. Probably cutting rough channels, filling them with water to find a level line, using simple but effective A-frame levels, and just relying on very experienced surveyors.
Okay. And then the really big question, getting the blocks up the pyramid as it grows taller. The ramps.
Ah, the ramps. That's still the biggest area of debate among archaeologists.
Not one single agreed-upon method.
No consensus on the exact configuration. Lots of theories. Maybe a long, straight ramp up one side, maybe a ramp that zigzagged up one face, or maybe a ramp that spiraled around the outside.
Or even inside. I've heard that theory too.
Yes, the possibility of internal ramps within the pyramid structure itself is another idea. Each theory has pros and cons, and the evidence isn't conclusive. But the basic principle, using some form of inclined plane, is almost universally accepted. They needed ramps.
Right. So incredible human effort, ingenious techniques, massive organization. That's the picture from archaeology.
That's the picture built up over decades of research.
But, and it's a big but, the sheer scale, the precision, it still leads some people to look for other explanations, doesn't it? Alternative theories.
It certainly does. And you can understand why, to some extent, these structures are genuinely awe-inspiring.
So what are the main arguments you hear from people who challenge the mainstream view?
Often it centers on the precision. How could they cut stone so perfectly? How could they align the pyramids so accurately to true north, for instance? The sheer speed building the Great Pyramid in maybe 20 years, that requires placing a block every few minutes, 2047.
Which sounds impossible when you put it like that.
Well, it depends on the number of work gangs and quarries operating simultaneously. But yes, the scale is daunting. Another point often raised is the perceived lack of sort of detailed blueprints or construction manuals.
Like, where's the IKEA instruction booklet for the Great Pyramid?
Yeah, exactly. People expect that kind of explicit record, and we don't really have it, apart from things like the Diary of Mir, which focuses on logistics. And then there are the celestial alignments, not just north-south, but alignments with stars or constellations that some people find too precise for the time.
Okay, so precision, speed, lack of detailed plans, alignments. And these doubts lead to what kind of alternative ideas?
They range pretty widely. Some propose intervention by extraterrestrials.
Aliens built the pyramids.
That's one popular idea in some circles, yes. That aliens provided the technology or even did the building. Others suggest a lost, highly advanced, ancient human civilization, maybe pre-dynastic, whose knowledge was forgotten.
Atlantis or something similar.
Concepts like that, yeah. The idea that humans were more technologically advanced in the distant past than we realize.
And when you look at the evidence presented for these, let's call them unconventional theories.
Yeah.
What does it usually consist of?
Often, it involves interpretations of certain hieroglyphs or carvings that Egyptologists don't agree with. Seeing, say, a light bulb shape in a temple relief and claiming it's ancient electricity.
When it's actually a depiction of a lotus flower and a snake or something symbolic.
Exactly. Misinterpretations out of context. Sometimes small anomalies in construction, a block that doesn't quite fit, or a measurement that seems unusual, are seized upon as proof of something non-human or technologically impossible for the Egyptians.
Magnifying small inconsistencies.
Sometimes, yes, and selective use of astronomical data, finding one alignment that fits a theory while ignoring others that don't.
Right, so how do we weigh these alternative ideas against the mainstream archaeological evidence?
Well, the key is critical thinking and evidence-based analysis. Mainstream archaeology relies on a vast amount of physical evidence found on the ground. The work of villages, the tools, the quarries showing extraction marks, the pottery, the organic remains, the texts like Mayer's diary. It forms a coherent picture, even if some details are still debated, like the ramps.
A picture of human ingenuity and massive effort.
Precisely. The alternative theories, while intriguing, often lack that kind of concrete, verifiable evidence. They tend to rely on speculation, misinterpretation, or arguing from ignorance. We don't know exactly how they did X, therefore it must have been aliens lost tech.
Which isn't really a logical argument.
Not really. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and frankly, the evidence for alien builders or a super advanced lost race just isn't there in the archaeological record. The evidence points strongly towards the ancient Egyptians themselves.
Okay, so appreciate the wonder, but stick to the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Giza is the most famous, but it's only one location. Egypt has pyramid fields all over, doesn't it?
Oh yes, scattered along the Nile Valley, mostly clustered near the ancient capital of Memphis. If you go geographically, north to south.
Where do you start?
Farthest north is Abu Rawash, where Djedefre, Khufu's successor, built his pyramid. It's quite ruined now.
Then Giza, obviously.
Then Giza. South of Giza is Zayat el Aryan, which has a couple of large, unfinished pyramid bases. Very mysterious.
Unfinished. So they just stopped.
Seems like it. Maybe the pharaoh died early. Then you get to Abu Sir. This became the main royal cemetery for the 5th dynasty, after Giza.
Are they as big as the Giza ones?
No, significantly smaller and frankly not as well built, often rubble cores with casing. But Abu Sir also has fascinating sun temples associated with the pyramids, which tells us about their religious practices.
A shift in focus.
Then Saqqara, which is huge and was used for burials for thousands of years. Djoser's step pyramid is there, of course, but also pyramids of later Old Kingdom pharaohs like Userkaf, Teti, Unas, plus many smaller ones, tombs, and even recently they found the pyramid of a previously unknown queen named Neith.
Constantly finding new things.
All the time at Saqqara. And don't forget Shepseskaf's tomb, the Mastabat el Firon, which looks like a giant sarcophagus, not a pyramid.
Interesting deviation. Okay, south of Saqqara.
But sure, really important. That's where Sneferu, Khufu's father, built 2 massive pyramids, the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid.
The Bent Pyramid is the one that changes angle halfway up.
That's the one. Probably because they realized the initial angle was unstable. It's amazing because it still has a lot of its original smooth casing. And the Red Pyramid, nearby, was the first successful, large, smooth-sided true pyramid. It's the 3rd largest in Egypt.
So Sneferu really experimented and learned.
He built 3 major pyramids in total. Then further south, you have Mazguna, with some late Middle Kingdom mud brick pyramids. Lisht, where the Middle Kingdom capital moved, has pyramids of Amenemhat I and Senusret I.
Okay.
Meidum has another Sneferu, or maybe his predecessor, Huni pyramid, originally a step pyramid that they tried to convert to a true pyramid, but it partially collapsed.
A construction failure.
Looks like it. Then Hawara and Elahun have pyramids of later Middle Kingdom pharaohs like Amenemhat III and Senusret II. El-Lahun is interesting because Senusret II actually incorporated a natural limestone hill into the core to save effort.
Clever. And then we mentioned the Kushite ones much further south in Sudan.
Right, at El Kuru and Nuri. Taharka's pyramid at Nuri is the biggest there. Shows the lasting legacy.
It really paints a picture of this tradition evolving and spreading over centuries and vast distances. And just to get a handle on the key players and their scale, we have some dates and heights.
We do. Let's see. Djoser's step pyramid around 2670 BCE was about 62 meters high. That's, what, over 200 feet?
Pretty impressive for the first one.
Then Sneferu's red pyramid at Dashur, maybe 2600 BCE, reached 104 meters, over 340 feet.
A little bigger.
Then Khufu, the Great Pyramid at Giza, around 2570 BCE. Originally, it soared to 146.7 meters.
Nearly 480 feet.
Yeah, though today, with the casing and capstone gone, it's closer to 450 feet, maybe 138 meters. Still immense.
And Khafre's.
Khafre's, right next door, was originally 136.4 meters, so only slightly shorter than Khufu's current height.
And Menkaure is the smallest of the 3 Giza ones.
Much smaller, yeah. Around 65 meters, so just over half the height of Khafre's. Still a massive undertaking, though.
Absolutely. Those numbers really drive home the scale of ambition, especially in the 4th dynasty.
It was an incredible period of monumental construction.
So, wrapping this deep dive up, it feels like the pyramids.
Yeah.
Well, they remain utterly captivating, don't they?
Undeniable.
And even though we have a pretty solid archaeological understanding of how and why they were built, those alternative ideas, the sheer mystery of it all, keeps that conversation going.
It does. And I think Regardless of whether you lean towards the established archaeology, which, has the weight of evidence behind it, or find yourself intrigued by other possibilities, what stands out is the sheer human achievement, the ingenuity, the organization, the dedication required to create these things that have lasted nearly 5,000 years. That's the real wonder, perhaps.
I think you're right. That level of human ambition and cooperation across generations almost, it's staggering. It really makes you think, doesn't it? What part of this whole pyramid story resonates most with you listening? Is it the engineering, the symbolism, the unanswered questions? What mysteries would you want to explore further?
Yeah, they definitely leave you wanting to know more. Their power to spark curiosity is just as enduring as the stones themselves.